Hey everybody, welcome to the NFL Power Ranking Show. We are presented to you by Energizer. From our studios in Los Angeles, my name is Andrew Siciliano. Other side of the screen here, the man who puts together the Power Rankings. We are now 6 weeks in. The man who watches the Cowboys and Chargers on Monday night and says, why are they doing this to me? I have a deadline to meet. Eric at home, how the heck are you?
You know me too well. I had about 8 different storylines going in my notepad there before the game finally ended, and I had a little clearer vision at that point.
Were you as excited as that Charger fan, that young lady making all the faces down there? Were you as excited as her watching that game?
I think being as long in this league as you and I have, we don't get quite that animated in the heat of the action, but she was having a moment. It's okay.
She was having a moment, and there's nothing wrong with that. It was fantastic. And you should see the Chargers' Twitter profile now. New profile pic. Check it out. He is a professional.
Yep.
He is here for your criticism and your love. So let's get right to it here. Your NFL Power Rankings, again, we are presented to you by Energizer. Scan the QR code. And when you go to NFL.com, you find the San Francisco 49ers no longer unbeaten. There are no longer any unbeatens. They are still number 1. The Chiefs are 2. The Dolphins, are 3. The Lions, everybody, at 4. Followed by the Eagles, who also take their first loss. And then the Jaguars, the Bills, and those Dallas Cowboys who made that young lady sad on Monday night. Let's get to the 49ers. They are banged up. They have injury concerns for not only Trent Williams, seems okay, but for Christian McCaffrey and for Deebo Samuel as well. I was at that game. I lost my mind doing Browns radio. Jake Moody's kick still went wide right. If it goes right down the middle, they are still number 1. But something happened in that game. The number 1 defense in football slowed them down. Eric, they lost for the first time in a calendar year, and for the first time this year, they were held under 30. Eric, they were held under 20. In my eyes, they are still number 1. Did you have any doubt in taking them out of the top spot?
I thought about it. Obviously the number 1 team in my poll loses. You got to consider it, right? Chiefs didn't have a convincing victory on Thursday. We know the Eagles lost. Other teams, I wasn't quite ready to put the Lions up that high. So there was a discussion in my head, but I landed with the team that, previously looked almost invincible at times, but has been the most consistent team in football. And as you pointed out, they were a made field goal away from winning this thing. I didn't love the fact that the Browns defense outplayed the Niners defense going against Brock Purdy versus PJ Walker. That concerned me a little bit. First time we'd seen Purdy really kind of struggle in an NFL start, except for the NFC Championship game where he got hurt. So, there's plenty of debates both ways, but I still think all said and done, 49ers still have the most complete roster, even if it does come with a few more questions today than it did going into Sunday.
And I'm with you. I think pound for pound, they are still the best fighter in this league, and there's actually a pregame fight as well. The Browns would tell you that fired them up a little bit, but they didn't need that much fire to get ready for this game. I think it's notable also that, as always, they came out first possession and marched right down the field. Browns kind of caught their breath and then dominated the next 3.5 quarters defensively. But it is notable that Purdy, despite the fact, Eric, that he was under pressure the entire game, even with only 3 sacks, when they needed him, put together that final drive and got them in position to win the game.
Yep, absolutely. That was a big moment, and that's what I think championship teams are made of. They can win without their best stuff.
All right, number 2, the Kansas City Chiefs did not blow out the Broncos at all, but they are your future champs here, presented to you by FanDuel, and they are the favorite to win the AFC at plus 220. Did you expect more of a convincing victory to open up Week 6?
Yeah, I think just given the fact, even though Denver had played the Chiefs twice pretty hard last year, pretty close games, I still figured, okay, short week, Broncos coming off the disappointing loss to the Jets, kind of fell apart at the end there. They've got to go on the road. Yeah, it's a well-known opponent for them. They've seen him plenty of times, but it is a new staff. Sean Payton coming in there, first time as Broncos head coach. And, everything we'd seen out of the Denver defense at that point suggested, boy, they're going to be in trouble. They weren't. They made plays. They kept the score close. They gave their team a chance. It was really the failures there at the end. They couldn't push the ball forward. And, you give the Chiefs defense a lot of credit. They've kind of held this team together as Mahomes and Kelsey and Pacheco and the rest of those receivers are all kind of figuring things out on the fly. I'm not concerned. Remember, they started 3-4 a couple years ago and still made it to the AFC Championship, a game they should have won too against the Bengals. So a lot of football left. I still see good things out of this Chiefs team. I'd like to see a little bit more, at least what we've gotten used to seeing over the past couple years.
Yeah, and they are getting the Chargers in town this week at Arrowhead, with the Chargers coming off the Monday night loss and a chance to drop the Chargers to 2-4, which would be huge for the Chiefs there in the AFC West. Let's unpack the Dolphins, because they fell behind 14-0 to the Carolina Panthers, almost like a little kid playing with their food, sitting in the high chair, and eventually they woke up and then, destroyed that meal that mom put down in front of them. But as you point out, and they're going to be tested this week, we'll unpack this a little bit more later. As you point out, the 5 wins for the Dolphins have come against teams with a combined 5 wins. The one really good team they faced, the Bills, they got pasted.
Yeah, there's no ignoring it at this point, right? I mean, the teams that they've beaten up on, including Carolina, whom they fell behind 14-0 to on Sunday, haven't been very good elsewhere. You look at other matchups, you look at every other number. The analytics people, are looking at this and saying, until we see them against the caliber of the Chiefs and the Eagles over the next 3 weeks, that's probably when we're getting a clearer vision of what this team is. They haven't played well traditionally against the Bills, so there might be a little bit of a flawed metric there. But still, these next 3 opponents, including the Patriots, who've been bad, but at least made a game of it in Foxborough, I would say the bookend games carry a little more weight in determining how good is Tua, how good is Tyreek Hill, and how good is this defense, Andrew? I worry a little bit about the fact that they can give up long drives and sustained yards over the course of 4 quarters against not the greatest offenses sometimes.
And they get an Eagles team now on Sunday Night Football coming off their first loss. I mean, the Bills were a massive test. They failed that test, and they don't win in Buffalo. We know that. Josh Allen lights up that defense, regardless of whether it's Brian Flores or Vic Fangio as the coordinator. But the Eagles are truly now the test for the Dolphins. Big stage, national stage, obviously that's not going to affect them, but they get an Eagles team coming off their first loss. Let's get now to the Lions at 4. And I said this before, when you take the Niners and the Eagles and you say these are the 2 best teams in the NFC, for my money, it's clear to me the Lions now are the 3rd best team. And we have said this, they're the team you don't want to face in January. Now you have them ahead of the Eagles, but the Lions are legit as a top 5 team in football.
It's a new day, man. It's really exciting to see a team that has been down for so long have sustained success. And this isn't some fluke thing, right? We've seen the progress built over a couple years. They came into this season with high expectations based on what happened the second half of last year, and that was without a good defense. Guess what? They've really improved that side of the ball. Kudos to Aaron Glenn. They've really found ways to replace guys like C.J. Gardner-Johnson. Brian Branch has been out a few weeks as well. So, every few weeks, whether it's on defense or offense, they seem to suffer one of those injuries in mid-game where you think, all right, what are they going to do now? And that happened Sunday with Montgomery. He goes out. They have to forge a run game together. No Jahmyr Gibbs. Jared Goff is playing really good football, and that defense completely closed the door on the Bucs. So, man, every time out, the Seattle game was a little frustrating defensively, but every time out you feel like they're making strides defensively, and Jared Goff's confidence and their confidence in him continues to grow.
And they lose David Montgomery in this game. Consider also what it was worth there for the Buccaneers. I mean, this was a chance for them to prove their worth as well. They're
Absolutely.
At home, a chance to come up in weight class. And yes, the Lions are now a test for those other teams in the NFC, a measuring stick, if you will. How good are we? I think it's also interesting this week when the Lions go into Baltimore. That game is in the early window on Sunday. Yeah. The Ravens are a good team. I mean, they needed Justin Tucker and a 70-yard Devin Duvernay punt return there to do the job against the Titans in London, but they're coming home without the bye, maybe some dead legs and maybe some jet lag. Lions-Ravens Week 7, that one is going to be fun. Now we get to the Eagles. Okay, they had to lose eventually. I find it interesting how we kind of justify or explain how they lost. Maybe not justify. Because we've been nitpicking, or at least people have been nitpicking, Eric, in Philly all year, that this team doesn't look right. So they finally get their comeuppance. And now they have to deal with a Lane Johnson injury here as well.
Yeah, it was tough watching Jack Driscoll, his replacement, get beat repeatedly in the second half, and it reminds you just how valuable Lane Johnson is. We sometimes forget about these core pieces up front, and when one of them gets hurt, one of them's missing. Remember, they lose Sumalo in the offseason too. It looks a whole lot different. All of a sudden, this Star Wars offense has kind of had the jet fuel taken out of it. So, look, Jalen Hurts had some good moments. I thought one of the picks should have been on Goddard. I thought one of them was not necessarily his fault. The third one absolutely was, and it came at a critical time. You can't excuse that. That was a poor throw, poor decision. Never should have happened in the situation they were in, trying to protect the lead at that point. So there's still some stuff that falls back on Hurts and falls back on a new play caller as well. It doesn't quite feel and look like what Shane Steichen was able to dial up last year. Not putting it all on Brian Johnson's head, but still at the same time, a lot to figure out there offensively.
I'm going to push back a little bit against Robert Saleh, who did walk his post-game comments back on GMFB Tuesday morning. Jalen Hurts was not embarrassed in that game. Jets defense played very well, especially with their banged-up secondary. They deserve all the credit in the world. Tony Adams, another DB from that Orion Walters DB factory in Illinois, made a huge play and a big run back there in the second half. So, yeah, give the Jets their credit. But Jalen Hurts was not in any way embarrassed. And now we get this one coming up on Sunday. Jalen Hurts with a chance to bounce back against Vic Fangio. That defense tested against Tua and Mike McDaniel. How do you see that one?
Yeah, Fangio's defense, I think, tests your patience. You may have watched the Dolphins defense on Sunday and you said, hey, Bryce Young was taking, 6, 7, 8-yard checkdowns all day. What's so impressive about that? But it's a different story against an offense that is used to putting up big numbers. We saw what the Eagles were able to do last year. And I think that's going to be something that kind of tests Jalen's patience and also tests the Eagles' patience. We got to wait for that big play to present itself. Let's get the favorable down and distance. Let's get good field position. Let's get the right score and the right time on the clock when we take our shots, okay? So I think that's going to be part of it. And then defensively, like you said, they've got to kind of patch things together in the secondary and hope that pass rush kind of closes the door up front.
Yeah. I also want to see what happens if Tyreek Hill busts out a 70-yard touchdown. Does he take a cell phone from a Philly fan? Would a Philly fan help Tyreek Hill celebrate? He wants your fine, NFL. He wants to find a way to celebrate. Bring on the fine. It'll be fun with Philly fan. That is why I am watching. You're watching the Power Ranking Show to find out where the Browns are, of course. Or maybe not. I am. We'll tell you coming up next. All right, everybody, the Power Ranking Show here. We are presented to you by Energizer. Go to NFL.com, see the rest of the rankings. The Ravens, hard-fought win in London. They come home up 1. They are the number 9 team. Remember, 2 weeks ago, they beat the Browns, who stunned the Niners. They go up 2. Eric already liked them. Eric had them at 12. Now the Browns are at number 10. The Seahawks, the Bucks, the Bengals, they look good again. The Chargers, the Jets, and the Houston Texans. The Team of the Week is presented by Truist. Eric Edholm, that Team of the Week, the Cleveland Browns, who they believed all along. They believed that they had the best defense in football. I think now everybody else believes through 5 games, when you include that Niners victory, they have allowed 1,002 yards. That's it, Eric.
That's called shutting it down right there. And I think a lot of people came into that game thinking, all right, this is going to be where the Niners show they have the best defense. But it didn't turn out that way, as you said, after that first touchdown drive where the Niners moved down the field. Maybe a little help, the fact that 2 of their big playmakers were out for part of the game. still, I thought the way they pursued and flowed and tackled so well, covered well, was really impressive. Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah, I thought, had some great coverage plays. Dalvin Tomlinson in the middle, up and down that defense. Thought they had a real terrific performance. And look, you win with a quarterback you didn't even have on your roster in July. I think that's a victory on top of the one you already got in the standings. So that was huge. It was what they couldn't do against the Ravens a few weeks back. So big step for the Browns. Yeah, I enjoyed a little schadenfreude with people poking holes in my last week's rankings, right? I saw something, Andrew, and you did too. You were up close.
Sure.
You know how good this team can be if that defense is dominating.
Yeah, and it was dominant. The question now is that a springboard, if you will? They go to Indianapolis. They're not going to face Anthony Richardson this week. They get Gardner Minshew. It's a bit of a trap, my opinion here. But remember, the Ravens get the Lions. They could lose that. The Steelers are in L.A. to the Rams. They could potentially lose that. This is now a chance to get to 4-2 and kind of pick yourself up off the mat and get to the top, potentially, of the AFC North. Just here saying. All right, moving on from the Browns, let's get now to the rest of these rankings here as we go from 9 down to 16 and see the Bengals. And we saw it last week here, Eric, as well, that it wasn't that they beat Arizona. It's that Joe Burrow was moving and he looked normal again. He looked like himself again. We saw that again against Seattle, and we saw red zone defense to hang on and win that game.
Boy, if Lou Anarumo's defense is known for one thing, I think by this point it is making huge plays when backed up against your own goal line. I mean, Jermaine Pratt against the Raiders years ago, Von Bell against the Patriots late in the season, obviously the playoff game, Sam Hubbard and everything. I mean, they have a knack for doing this, and 5 red zone trips, they'll add 10 points, I want to say, for those total. So it really did come into play because as great as Burrow and the offense looked the first 2 drives, Cincinnati didn't do a whole lot after that. It was a tough slog. The run game's been inconsistent, the O-line, blah, blah, blah. We know all the issues. And somebody else other than Jamar Chase has to step up, but we're seeing a little edge with this team now. The defense has responded. The offense has made, a signal that they're getting better. So everything's at least trending in the right direction, even if I'd argue they haven't played a complete football game quite yet.
No, they haven't. Andre Ushivas, the rookie from Princeton, scored a touchdown. And again, that red zone defense here when Geno and the Hawks got down and looked like they're about to go in and potentially win the game there at the end of the game, you had 6 different guys have at least 4 pressures, which is just absurd for Lou Anarumo's defense, and they helped win that game. Let's move on here to the Chargers, who are number 14, and I can't really figure them out because they couldn't run the ball Monday night. Austin Eckler came back. They had 53 yards rushing as a team. And without Corey Linsley, Eric, these last 2 seasons, their offensive line falls apart. That was the most pressure Herbert had felt in any game all year.
After the finger injury last week, the thumb injury, So, yeah, I mean, it was one more thing kind of stacked against him. I thought he looked pretty good early, ball handling, moving around, things like that, made some big throws. But he overthrew Keenan Allen for a long gain in the first half, did so again in the second half, had the late interception, almost got picked off with about 8 or 9 minutes left to go on that second to last possession. So there was a lot left on the bone there, and I thought the offensive line was part of it. Penalties were a big deal. And then defensively, Michael Davis can't tackle Tony Pollard, and he goes 61 yards or whatever. So, it's just plays like that and the 4th and 1 play that they didn't convert in the red zone. Mm-hmm. Week after week, whether they win or lose, Andrew, these plays seem to keep popping up. So it's self-inflicted wounds, in my opinion. They're talented. They just can't execute at that high level.
Yeah. What happens when they lose? If they lose in Kansas City and fall to 2-4, this team is far better than 2-4. If they had won last night, then it's 3 in a row. After the 0-2 start, they get to 3-2. Everyone is happy here going into Arrowhead. Everyone is happy with the Jets now. Aaron Rodgers is throwing without anything around his Achilles. Yeah. He's going to be back in 2 weeks. I'm kidding. The Jets are 15 because of that defense and because Zach made a couple of throws. That's all they need, Eric. Make a couple of throws, get picks like this from Tony Adams or anyone of the secondary, and they will survive.
Yep. No turnovers. That's great. That's exactly what you want. You take just enough risk to sort of cater to what Zach does well. Breece Hall has just enough plays. It wasn't the banner game we saw from him last week, but still, for that defense to create 4 turnovers and do so without their top 2 corners, I thought was really impressive. Stunning win in so many ways, not just against who it came, but also the way it came, late in the game, forcing a bad Jalen Hurts throw. Very impressive stuff from a Jets team that, look, 5 plays into their Monday night game, a lot of people wanted to bury because of the Aaron Rodgers injury. Maybe he's back, maybe he's not, but either way, this team has shown some grit and some fight, even if it's not the prettiest thing every week.
You want grit and fight? How about the Houston Texans? They are making power moves, everybody. Those power moves are presented by Energizer. They are 16, Eric. They are heading to the bye, and they do so at 3-3, only a game back in the loss column out of a playoff spot.
They're right there. They're knocking on the door. We moved them back a little. Now they're back in that contention spot. And yeah, C.J. Stroud's interception streak ended. It was a throw he'd like to have back. But boy, from that point on, I thought not only did the team rally around him, but he kind of rallied everybody else. And you just saw poise from him. He never looked rattled. He escaped pressure very well and kept himself composed the entire time. Didn't make as many throws in the second half. But you could see a young signal caller out there with leadership skills and good performance overall, I think. And look, the offensive line did great in the first half. The defensive line dominated for most of 60 minutes. And they took a Saints team coming off a big win and just kind of kept them at arm's distance. Got to hang on a little. But I love what this team is doing. And D'Amico Ryan's become Mr. Houston all of a sudden. It's been fun to watch him grow this thing from the ground up.
Yep. C.J. Stroud threw a pick, but they survived. And they made the right pick in getting him, no doubt, at number 2. Coming up on the Power Ranking Show here, presented by Energizer, where are the LA Rams? Maybe higher than you thought. That's coming up. It is your NFL Power Ranking Show. We are presented by Energizer. The Rams are up 5 after dominating on the ground in the second half and beating the Arizona Cardinals. Interesting. Saints drop 4, then the Steelers, the Packers, the Colts, the Falcons, the Raiders, and the Commanders. Eric Edholm putting these all together. Let's talk Rams here. If they beat the Steelers this week, they will. How high do they go, Eric?
Yeah, good question, right? I mean, we've seen Cooper Kupp come back and play great. The run game was terrific, although now all of a sudden the health of Rivers and Williams are in question. So, you every week it feels like, wow, pretty good win there. And there's something kind of holding you back. Kupp's injury was big early. Obviously, they had to shuffle offensive linemen, different things like that. But this no-name defense has done a really good job. They fell behind 9-3, and it wasn't an issue on Sunday. Really took over. Tale of 2 halves, right? You throw the ball in the first, you run it in the second. Kind of an old school formula there, and I just can't wait to see two of the best coaches, one young, one old, experienced, and Mike Tomlin. I don't want him getting mad at me, but a good matchup this weekend. I like that. I like what's at stake in this game.
Yeah, that game is at SoFi right here, like right there through that wall in LA.
Right,
so they go up 5. The Falcons go down 6-22. I'm going to pound the table right now for Taylor Heineke. I know he gives one to the other team every time you put him out there, but he's also going to throw a couple of touchdowns. You're not going to see bad body language from the wide receivers. I'm sorry, Desmond Ridder. You throw in Taylor Heineke, I think this is the 4th best team in the NFC right after the Lions, man.
It's crazy. I picked the Falcons to be the division winner in the preseason because I thought, look, if Ridder is solid, middle of the road, they could be okay. That defense is much better. The run game could be special with Bijan. It really has. But for them to fail to cross 16 points in half their games so far this season is inexcusable. I think the defense, for the most part, has done the job. But it's been Ridder, coming off his best game, taking a big step back this week on Sunday and, just forcing passes there and one in the red zone. It was the kind of performance he most definitely did not need. And the Falcons have a tough call lying ahead if he keeps playing this way.
Sorry, Desmond Ridder. Real quick, the bottom of the rankings here for fans of these teams. The Vikings at 25, followed by the Titans, the Cardinals, the Broncos, the Patriots, the Bears, the Giants, and the Carolina Panthers, who head into a bye with Frank Reich going, sure, Thomas Brown can call plays. And it was all my decision. I don't think we have enough time to unpack that one. We could probably do an hour. Eric, thank you as always. Download the podcast. Watch us on the Fast channel, the NFL channel. Enjoy Week 7, everybody. Bye-bye.